It's almost 18 months since the passing of my mother due to medical negligence at the hands of Huddersfield Royal Infirmary. She visited the hospital for a routine procedure and was left to die, the cause of which was sepsis. She was 85. Huddersfield Royal Infirmary is a hospital in West Yorkshire and provides care, or lack of it in this case, as part of Calderdale and Huddersfield NHS Trust. The details I speak about here are in the public domain, in that they were read out at the Open Court earlier this year. I've invited questions in relation to the incident and about grief in general. My mother didn't deserve to die in the way she did in the hands of the people who let her.
Could you tell us a little about your mother? What was she like as a person?
My mother was always someone who believed in visiting the sick, helping out where she could with her neighbours. A very generous person, would give you her last penny. She was a good mother to me and a good wife to my late father, who died in 2010 due to Alzheimer's. Mum continued to make a new life for herself after my dad's passing, but she never fully recovered. They had been together since 1958, but she was coping well and would still make time for others.
How would you describe your relationship with your mother?
Well, my mother and I were always close, even though we weren't always living together. The miles separated us to a certain degree as I moved away. In her early 80s, we got her through the pandemic, as she was beginning to struggle a bit at that time. We all were, though, weren't we? I was ill as a young child and wasn't due to live more than a few months. I'm in my early 50s now, and if it wasn't for her persistence with the NHS in my formative years and as a baby, I wouldn't be here now.
Can you talk us through what happened at the hospital in as much details as you're comfortable sharing?
Yes, I took Mum into the hospital one weekend in readiness for an endoscopy and a colonoscopy the following days. She had been suffering with loose bowel movements and discomfort for some time. Her GP put her on a fast-track route for cancer, but it turned out there was nothing like that at all in the end. The colonoscopy was due to be carried out, and in a nutshell, during the procedure, the woman carrying out the search with the camera perforated Mum's bowel, and the procedure was terminated. This is naturally a very serious situation. She had a subsequent CT scan to determine the damage and was due to be seen by surgical staff to see if she could undergo an operation, but the only thing that could really be done was to divert her stomach into a stoma. It was decided that the chances of survival with this were very low due to diabetes, and the course of action instead was to put her on specific antibiotics, keeping her in hospital for observation and rest. The hospital failed to put her on the correct antibiotics for almost a day, I think even in fact longer, and she developed sepsis, was in lots of pain and had to be put onto a syringe driver with morphine or something equivalent. And she died some days later, still not having had the correct antibiotics. She was just 2 weeks in hospital. At the coroner's inquest, the coroner said in her long narrative that the lack of actions by the hospital more than minimally contributed to Mum's death, and sepsis was recorded as the main cause. She didn't deserve to die that way, and it will haunt me forever. But things were wrong at the hospital, things I didn't realise at the time and wish I had.
At what point did you feel things started to go wrong at the hospital?
Looking back, I didn't see anything was wrong, really. The truth about what was happening was kept from me, I think. Although at that stage a full investigation hadn't obviously taken place. I'll probably talk about that shortly. Nurses were coming in and out to see Mum into the room, observations were being taken, and everything was very calm and they seemed to be keeping me up to date. I began to think that she wasn't going to make it though, probably about 5 to 7 days in. Difficult to say. I just wish I had some more support at that time. There was only Mum and me really. A very small family indeed, and although my wife was very supportive, she wasn't constantly present due to work, and didn't need to be at that time. After all, it was just a routine procedure. I was there every day, sometimes 15 hours a day, and my wife visited too, and I know she found the situation very upsetting, having known her mother-in-law for many years.
How did the hospital staff communicate with you throughout your mother's care?
They were keeping computer records of everything they said, and I said, and indeed Mum said and confirmed, she needed rest as the perforation may just heal itself, but I could see that she was going downhill. She never complained. She was of faith and prayed a lot, quietly. She had clergy visit her, and she prayed with them. The staff would tell me it could take a few weeks of rest, and they weren't going to send her home. She wouldn't have managed anyway. She was bedbound and wasn't able to eat. Well, they wouldn't give her any solids and only water at that time. She was in a sorry state, but we had some hope when she had a period of 24 hours of improvement, but this slipped away. To answer your question, looking back, I wasn't told a great deal until I was finally told that she would be going into palliative care, or going on to palliative care. I was taken into a room one day before I even saw Mum and given the news. It was very difficult. Perhaps the worst day I've ever had. Worse than she died. Worse than the day she died, much worse.
Looking back, were there any specific moments when you wish you or the hospital staff had acted differently?
Well, I felt a lot of guilt. I still do to a degree. That I should have asked more questions at the time. I shouldn't have taken her into hospital that day. But she wanted to go, that kind of thing. She wanted to find out what was wrong with her. And I felt responsible. I was now the adult looking after the child, so to speak. Mum had always looked after me, as I said earlier. I think the hospital should have been more transparent at the time. It's left a bad taste with me, as if they hadn't been honest then, but they could have dealt with things differently perhaps. The outcome probably wouldn't have been the same. The outcome would have probably been the same, but we could have been more prepared. So it wasn't until a few weeks after Mum's death that I felt that answers had to be made, and I had to put a complaint into the hospital, a formal complaint, which was eventually, it took months, responded to, and I was asked to do a Teams meeting or go in to speak to the surgeon overseeing the inquiry. Because I put in a complaint, the inquiry was initiated, but I do think they were already doing their internal inquiry. And had I not put in the complaint, I would never have actually had any further interaction with the hospital until the coroner's inquest.
How did you initially cope with the news of your mother's passing?
The hospital said I could stay the night before she died. I think it was an indicator to me that I would not see her again alive. And on the Saturday night, I kind of said goodbye. I actually took a photo of Mum, which turned out to be my last. She was sleeping and had been praying earlier that day. I was staying nearby the hospital, and at 6:30 a.m. the following morning, my mobile rang, and I knew it was the hospital. They asked if it was me and if I was okay, and whether I was with someone. I knew what was coming. She had passed. I was coping well. I was numb, though, and I went to the hospital to see her, and she was at peace. We collected her things and came away. That day I felt a sense of relief, if that's the right word, that she was at peace, no more suffering. But for me, the grief journey was about to begin, and I didn't realise I wasn't ready for it.
Are there things you wish you had known about grief in those first days or weeks after your loss?
I think I wish I'd had a timeline of how it was going to be, but it's never like that. Sort of a case study almost, but I learned that grief is triggered by many things and at many times. Death is not actually the problem. Grief is. Grief is coming to terms with understanding that things won't be the same ever again. I kind of knew that and thought I had it under control as the weeks passed by. I was basing it on how I had been when my father died, but I think due to his Alzheimer's, I had had 10 years to come to terms and say goodbye to him. Mum was just going into hospital for a procedure. I know there were risks involved with any procedure in hospital. I just never thought she wouldn't come out.
What was most helpful for you during the grieving process?
The counselling. If I'd not taken it, I'm not sure how I'd be. I know I'd be very different to how I am now. I'm still sad. I always will be. I think the counselling telling me just to let it flow through me when I felt upset, to cry, to feel angry and frustrated, and just let it all come through when I needed to, and as often as I needed to, and not hold on to it or dismiss it or to read too much into it, I think. Also, I'd see some bad news on TV and I'd become upset, and I realised that there were actually people worse off than I was at the time. Parents who had lost their children and didn't know where they were, if they were alive, and families of people who had to live with the fact that their loved ones had been murdered, that kind of thing. It put a lot into perspective. It didn't make it easier, but it was a reminder. I've had my own traumas to live with in life, friends committing suicide and other sad family matters. It all compounds and comes back at times.
Was there anything that was not helpful?
Yes, I think people saying that time is a great healer, give it time, you'll feel different in a few months, etc. It just didn't feel the right thing to say to me at the time. I know people mean well. I would now never say that to someone else, knowing how I felt at the time. What was helpful was people saying that Mum had lived a good life and wouldn't want to see me sad. Well, it was helpful to a certain degree, when it wasn't, if you know what I mean. People saying that I just had to move on. My mother wasn't there any longer. I couldn't see her to talk to her, but I learnt that I could have conversations in my head with her. You see, I was brought up a Roman Catholic, but I don't believe much now. The afterlife, etc. You kind of have things like that drilled into you. But I do believe that people live with you in your head. And I do feel that Mum is looking out for me. And I have had reassuring evidence of this during the last 18 months.
Have you received an explanation or apology from the hospital regarding what happened?
An explanation, yes. An apology, no. Well, kind of, let me explain. I don't think I would have had much of an explanation, if any, until the coroner's inquest, unless I put in a complaint that I had. I was invited to the hospital, as I said, 5 months after Mum died, and was given a full explanation of the errors that they knew about at that time. Some of which I haven't gone into full details about here on this interview, for a number of reasons. There was a verbal apology in that, much as the surgeon overlooking the inquiry said he was sorry that Mum had not made it through with them, I think was how it was said. But I was kind of holding out for something in writing, which I now realise I was never going to receive, perhaps for legal reasons. But yes, everything was explained far too late. I also think having the knowledge I had after this meeting meant that although the subsequent inquest was going to be a difficult day, a kind of final closure, there would be no surprises at that event. The coroner thanked the hospital trust at the inquest for their transparency, but I feel they were pushed in a corner to provide the same.
What do you think should change in the healthcare system to prevent similar events?
I found out at the inquest that the hospital had made changes in the light of this sad incident, and maybe others, who knows. There will be more training at every level within the department and the wider hospital. There will be checks put in place, and just as important, they wouldn't automatically put patients through the same procedure and perhaps consider less invasive diagnostics such as CT scans, etc. And certainly put more consideration into the age of the patient in the process. I learnt that some health trusts do not put patients through this procedure when they were over 75. So lots of changes have been implemented and documented.
In what ways, if any, has the experience changed your perspective on healthcare, particularly with the National Health Service?
I think, as I said earlier, I had to go into hospital for a procedure myself and was very nervous about it. I didn't want to go. I was lucky to be able to go privately, and I know that many of the same surgeons work for both the NHS and private hospitals. But sadly I felt that at a private hospital you feel more valued and respected. Life is very short and fragile.
What keeps your mother's spirit alive for you today?
I think the knowledge that she did the very best for me. I had 50 odd years with her around, and I was very fortunate in a way. Some people do not get that. Lots of people loved her and appreciated her. She was a strong woman until she wasn't, and she was a fighter but also a good listener. I think I'm very much like her in many ways. I can have the same Irish temperament. I just wonder if I am wrong about it all and we'll all reunite in spirit one day. I think that answers it really. Maybe I just can't put it into words, but I know she is there.
Is there a message you wish others could hear?
I think I would say to anyone in this situation, seek help. Definitely seek help. Talk. Feel sad. But do things you enjoy at the same time. Be open about how you feel. See a flower or a bird or something. See beauty in life. Plant a tree in commemoration. And just know that your loved one would never want you to be sad. Understand that they went through the same feelings as you are doing when their parents died. And just be kind to yourself.
I understand the difficulty of sharing these memories, but do you bear any anger or continued annoyance with the hospital?
I'm still angry, and I feel emptiness, a sense of lacking trust in authority. Not having the answers earlier, I think, has compounded everything, and I'm not sure I will be the same again. If I had had a written apology, would a piece of paper have meant anything? Would it have changed things? I don't think so. But it may have been nice. Perhaps it would have upset me more. Perhaps I held out too long for something that was never going to happen. The actions that were taken at the Huddersfield Hospital, or lack of them, was a collective mistake. I can't single out anyone individually, but I hope I never have to meet any of those people. My wife and my dogs have helped me immensely, plus all the help and comfort I've had from friends. They know who they are.
If you have been affected by what you have heard today, there are organisations that can help. Please take a look at the details in the narrative below.